Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Open Space and Recreation Committee for Monday, August 1st at 2022 at 7:01 p.m. And I guess I need to announce the meeting is being tape recorded. And I guess we need to take a roll call. So, David, you want to say present? I think you're muted.
Dave Vision present.
Is Emmy? I don't see Emmy online. Mary Jane,
Churchill present.
George,
Present.
Colby, he's not here, and James,
Present.
Veronica,
Present.
and Carol Hoffs is present. I have no additions or deletions, and the minutes of June 6th, did anybody have any comments or discussion on the minutes?
I do. I forgot to add what Colby said that he was interested in working on. So I really think the minutes should be amended to add Colby wanting to work on vegetation, fishery, wildlife, and environmental problems.
Okay, so you want to wait till the next meeting to approve the minutes?
Could we approve them with the amendment as
Sure,
amended?
yeah, okay. Can I take a motion to approve the minutes with, as amended?
So moved.
Somebody want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mary Jane, how do you
I-
vote?
I vote yes, so we should.
David, how do you vote?
I wasn't there, so I have to abstain.
Okay. George
Yes.
and James,
I abstain.
okay, and Carol Hoff says yes, and Veronica.
Veronica Cal, yes.
Okay, so then I guess we move to our work session on discussion of results of the citizen survey. And it's, is that Jeff?
He needs to unmute.
Jackie Mooney.
Can he hear us?
I don't know, he looks so
Jeff.
serious.
I wonder if he can't hear us.
Unmute.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Jeff? Can you hear us? Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
yes.
I have no sound. I can't hear anyone in the meeting.
Oh, really? Do I need to go get,
You can't hear anybody in the meeting.
It must be on his end.
okay, who would I find?
That was Hartley who just said that. Dave, I don't know, if someone
I
just
think
said
Dave just said,
that.
should we get Heartland?
Yeah,
Who would he be?
he's.
Yeah, I heard that. I don't know.
Oh.
I can't do anything on my end. It would have to come from Jeff's computer. Apparently, he's got a problem on his end.
Do you have something, do you need earbuds or do you, sometimes that happens when I've put earbuds in and not pulled them out. Can you hear us, Jeff?
Again now, yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I had to go in and completely reset my settings, so I apologize. It was connected to the wrong mic and speakers, but we're all set now. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, we're at,
Okay, we're on the results of the citizen survey. Did you want to talk about that?
Perfect. Yeah, good timing. Here we are. So I sent out a summary of the survey results a few weeks back after the survey ended. And since then, I've been going through and doing some analysis. I updated some of the graphs to a more appropriate display as far as looking at the data. And I've done some interpretation of some of the results. So I'm happy to go through those with all of you. Is it possible to share my screen?
Can you share a screen, Hartley? I'm talking to Holly. Let me.
Can you tell? if
Yes,
your
I just
host-
made, I just made him co-host.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Can you guys see that all right?
Yes,
Yes.
Perfect. I'll zoom in here. Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, very briefly, a little background. Open space and recreation plan is required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to qualify for certain grant funding to acquire open space land or recreation land, such as parks and playgrounds, for several grant programs. Obviously, public participation is a very important component of any plan and every plan that we do. But in particular, it's a requirement of open space and recreation plans. So one of the best ways to gather public input is through a public survey, because we can get it out so broadly and ask plenty of questions, both specific and general, to gather a lot of information. In particular, what we're trying to gather here with an open space and recreation plan is we're really trying to assess community needs and the vision as far as an open space and recreation plan over the next 5-year period of time. So the Townsend Open Space and Recreation Public Survey initiated on June 1st, and it ran through until June 31st of 2022, and we gathered 317 responses during that time. A pretty good response, and I would say that the demographics show that the respondents were varied and a pretty good representative of the demographics of the community. So we were happy with that. Nice work, Townsend. You guys did a good job there. So the first question on the survey dealt with how much do you value open space in Townsend? It's a really basic, general question, wanting to get an idea of how people value open space and how, what their perspective is. Not surprisingly, because a lot of people truly do value open space, we had more than 99% of all respondents in Townsend valued open space to some degree. 84% of those respondents valued open space a lot or a great deal. In particular, a great deal covered the largest number of responses, and it was 61.9% of all respondents valued open space a great deal. So that's good. We're off to a good start here. People actually care about the things we're talking about in this plan. Funny enough, only one respondent chose that he or she did not value open space at all. Only one respondent. So either there's someone in Townsend that truly doesn't like open space, or maybe it was an error, but we did have one response that said they did not value open space at all. And only 2% of the respondents only valued it a little, and 12% moderate. So again, great amount of 84% of respondents were either a lot or a great deal. So moving forward from here, greater than 70% of the respondents considered all of the listed features of Townsend's natural landscape to be either important or very important. Related to the question of landscape character is defined as those features, both natural and man-made, that give Townsend its unique character. So we asked respondents to rate the importance of certain features of Townsend's unique natural landscape. And of those features, respondents particularly valued the importance of rivers, ponds, streams, and wetlands in the Squannacook River, and forests, with close to 95% of all respondents considering those things to be very important or important. Respondents who thought certain features of the landscape to be somewhat unimportant or fully unimportant only accounted for a small percentage, less than 5% of all responses for each category, and less than 2% of the responses for a majority of the categories, such as rivers, ponds, streams, and wetlands, Squannacook River, and forests. So that's good. They value open space in general, and they hold in high regard certain things that are important to open space. For question 3, we asked the respondents to rate the importance of the following of Townsend's man-made or built landscape character. Now, not all open space is preserved land or undeveloped habitat land, conservation lands, say forests and things of that nature. Some of it includes things like the town common, hiking trails, rail trails, farmland, other town parks, historic buildings, scenic roads, historic relics such as dams or stone walls, cemeteries, and neighborhoods. So all of these can play a role in part of the town's complete open space makeup. Greater than 70% of respondents considered the listed features of the man-made or built landscape to be important or very important. So again, we're seeing the same results. A large majority of the respondents held these things in high regard. The next question, we asked respondents how often they visited the following locations in Townsend for recreation. And within this question, the choices were very often, often, rarely, never, or I don't know where the heck it is. So we wanted to know if a respondent didn't know where something was. We consider that to be important information too for other parts of the open space and recreation plan. So you can see here that in general, the blue being very often, the yellow being often, the turquoise being rarely, and the orange being never, a lot of respondents for the first few things, the library, state park, trails for walking, Squannacook River Rail Trail, Willard Brook State Park, etc. A lot of them visited it very often or often, with a lesser amount visiting them rarely, but really with very few people saying that they never visited those places, and very few people on the far left saying that they didn't know where it was. So for the most part, as you see here, Squannacook River Rail Trail, Willard Brook, Townsend State Forest, town trails for walking, the town common, and really all the way down to Pearl Hill State Park. For the most part, it followed the same pattern. People knew where these places were. They visited them either often or occasionally, and they knew where they were. So that's good. And here we have, you'll see that several of these questions, I won't go through the comments, but several of these questions had a place to leave a comment. And the comments are very important because they don't play into the data as far as the proportions or the numbers, but they give you a better general idea of how people are feeling or why they answered things a certain way, or if there were other things that weren't there in the question that they wanted to get across. So as a committee, I suggest that you guys look closely not only at the numbers that we present here in the graphs, but also read through the comments on your time outside of the meeting, and to try to gain a better understanding of what people were thinking and how they were feeling and why they answered questions certain ways. There's also some suggestions that people make that could really come into play as far as identifying certain goals or needs. So the committee can work together to look through those. Anything that you see as interesting or that you think should be brought forward, share it with the other committee members, and somehow try to get those things in addition to the data when you're forming your goals and visions. And we'll talk more about that as far as next steps when I finish going over this. But basically, we'll have now, sometime by the end of September, we should formulate a set of visions and goals for the plan. And then we'll hold a public meeting at that point and get some public input and feedback on the goals that we come up with. And this survey that I'm going through today will really help to shape that and help the committee establish what those goals are. So question number 5 asked people to rate their level of satisfaction with certain types of outdoor recreation facilities in Townsend. Hiking trails, bike paths, soccer fields, parks and playgrounds, and softball fields all ranked relatively high with satisfaction. And similarly with mountain bike trails, now you're starting to get at the kind of 50-50 where they're satisfied, but a large portion of the respondents, maybe 30%, were actually somewhat dissatisfied. But if you look all the way down from top to bottom, the turquoise number, the turquoise being dissatisfied and the orange being very dissatisfied, really don't show up that strongly. So in general, people are relatively satisfied with the types of recreation that are offered in Townsend. A couple of things that do jump out. A majority of respondents seem less than satisfied when it came to basketball courts and the general condition of recreation facilities. So this might mean that the open space and recreation plan over the next 5 years may want to think about setting some type of a goal or action that could somehow try to address that, and in hopes of improving the maintenance and condition of these areas, and then maybe somehow trying to tease out what it was that the public was dissatisfied about with basketball courts. Were they concerned that there weren't enough basketball courts, or are they concerned that the ones that are existing are not in very good condition? So that's something that you guys should be able to tease out, hopefully, but it's kind of important. The survey doesn't quite get to that level of detail. It just shows that with regard to basketball courts, there was some level of dissatisfaction. Oh, another one that was interesting and is worth mentioning: places for children, senior citizens, and places for adults to play and recreate. All were on the lower end of the spectrum here as far as the response rate, as far as satisfaction goes. In particular, places for adults to recreate was rated as the lowest ranking feature or category. So I think that's important to think about. Adults are looking for places to recreate and are feeling as though they're not fully satisfied with the opportunities or facilities that they currently have. Again, comments worth looking through. The next question asked respondents to rate Townsend's need for the following types of recreation facilities. And here, I'm not going to go into a high level of detail because we probably had 30 different types of facilities we wanted respondents to look at and consider. But we did get some really useful information because, as you can see, as I scroll down, there really was a range of responses from what people thought were very much needed to not very much needed. So again, in this particular question, we're asking people to rate the need of certain types of facilities. So in this particular case, if they're satisfied with the number or amount of facilities that already exist, it might get a lower need. Or if there are already a few, but they believe there should be more, then it might get high. But we did get a lot of great responses with bike paths and greenways, a recreation center, multi-use trails, environmental education areas and nature trails, neighborhood parks and playgrounds, nature-like youth learn and play area, and a disability-friendly youth play area, boating, canoe, and kayak launch, and open recreation fields for general use, rounding out the top 15. And Town Beach and community gardens were somewhere in the middle. And then as you get to the lower end, you're getting to the things that were really felt that they weren't really much needed. Things like mini golf, mountain biking pump track, disc golf course, golf driving range, handball courts, paintball area, golf course. Those things are rated as not much needed. So while there might be some people that really like or want those things, in general, the majority of respondents didn't think they were very important. So take a look at that when you have time on your own, after the meeting, to look more closely at the range of answers and people's level of need. The description I gave here below, my interpretation of the results, and consider that and think about it for generating the goals and actions moving forward over the next few months. Again, data below breaks down the exact proportions or percentages, and then comments below that. This question resulted in a lot of comments, I think 27 individual comments. So take a look through those. Some of them are telling. Okay, question number 7 asked the folks to rate the importance of the following open space goals. So here we provided goals that were mainly fashioned from the goals of the previous plan, with a little bit of change, and I think maybe 1 or 2 new concepts, but we listed several things, and I'll go through them because it's important to this question. The first was maintaining high quality drinking water. The second was keeping the Squannacook River protected and accessible. The next one, protect and maintain surface water and wetlands. The next one, protect additional conservation lands for recreation, habitat, and water supply protection. The next one was retaining the natural character and cultural heritage of the community. The next one was promote increased access and awareness of open space lands. Then the next, develop and improve recreation facilities and amenities. And finally, improve public outreach and information related to outdoor open space and recreation. Oh, sorry, one more. Improve linkages between recreational open space and existing neighborhoods or commercial areas, meaning providing access to open space lands, from open space lands to areas where people either live or work or play. And we thought that was an important one to include. So what you see here is that survey respondents really placed a high value on all of the listed open space goals. Greater than 50% of the respondents considered as very important the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals, as very important at a percentage of greater than 50%. So the vast majority of respondents thought those things were very important. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the lower 5, were all still important. When you look at the blue, everything was above 70% important, but several of them were above 50% very important. So in reality, whether you want to differentiate between very important or important, the bottom line is that everyone valued them to some extent, considering them at 70% or more to be important or very important, meaning that the neutral or no opinion, somewhat unimportant or unimportant, made up for the remaining 30% in all cases, which is a lower proportion or percentage of the respondents. And really the only one that had even anywhere more than, say, 5% of the respondents, a large part of that 30% took up neutral or no opinion, people who didn't really know where to place it, their value. So, I mean, you can see that the somewhat unimportant or unimportant were less than 5% in all cases, and really, I think less than 2% in most cases. So very few people thought that these goals were unimportant. They really put a high value on the goals. And when you look at the data, you'll see that the answers were pretty consistent as well, meaning that generally people, really a lot of the numbers went from a lot to a little down the spectrum, which is good. That gives you an indication that generally people all felt similarly, and that will really help for prioritizing these goals down the road. Not only do we know that they value these particular goals, but the way the responses were really gives you an idea of kind of where they place in importance. So that's good. Take a look at that. There wasn't really a lot of noise in the data, and worth looking at closely. Again, 21 comments. Read through the comments. People indicate certain things that are worth looking at and gaining a better understanding of how people are feeling. Question 8 asked how important respondents felt it is to protect the following aspects of the landscape for Townsend's wildlife. So what this question really is getting at is the importance of protecting wildlife habitat. And greater than 90% of all of the respondents responded that they considered all listed landscape features related to Townsend's wildlife habitat to be at least somewhat important, with 80% or more considering them to be at least important, and 50% or more for all categories finding them to be very important, to be at least very important. And a good percentage of people actually chose critically important, 50% for the first, and hovering for the next 4 or 5, hovering right around 40%. And it didn't really dip down to below 30% until the last 3. So a good majority of the respondents actually think these things are critically important. This means that they not only value open space, but they recognize the importance of open space for wildlife habitat, which indicates that they value the wildlife that does exist in Townsend, which is great. Okay, again, the data and about 9 comments for that particular question. The next question regarded water quality and water supply protection. And it said, what level of an agreement with the following statements related to water supply protection? Again, in this particular question, for most cases, greater than 50% at least agreed. And for some of the higher cases, people strongly agreed in the importance of water supply protection. And very few people responded negatively for any of the value-based questions. As we get down further, so for instance, the first 4 are all value-based questions. We're asking people how much they value certain things related to protecting the water supply. And for the most part, it was 70% or better as far as agreeing. The next one down, whether people would support purchasing strategic parcels to protect aquifers. And again, that was above 70% as well for agreeing with it. And, you know, less than 10% for the disagree or strongly disagree category. As we move down, whether Townsend should pursue water supply protection without purchasing the land or through conservation restrictions, and it was about 50-50 for 50, or at least it was 50% agreeing, some strongly agreeing, but it was a larger proportion of people really not having an opinion on that one. And I think that comes down to people not understanding really what a conservation restriction is, where a conservation restriction, you're purchasing certain development rights so that the land is protected in a certain way, and development isn't allowed on it, but the town doesn't take ownership of the land. The person who originally owned the land still maintains ownership. It's just protecting certain resources or uses on the land. That's a conservation restriction. So the next one asked if respondents were knowledgeable of existing water supply bylaws. And in this particular case, you're getting now less in agreement and higher in disagreement. So people don't know a lot about the water supply bylaws, and maybe there's an opportunity through the open space plan to make that a goal for education and outreach and trying to do a better job of informing the public about the water supply protection bylaws, especially because it is so important in Townsend, where you're completely dependent upon groundwater for the public water supply. There's no surface water protection areas with a large reservoir. It's all well water. So it is important that the public understands what those bylaws are and how they protect their water supply. The next question got into, do you know where the public water supply wells are in town? And I would say, 40% of people disagreed or strongly disagreed. So they weren't really sure or had no idea where the water supply wells were. And neutral, no opinion, covered another 25% or so. So you really only end up with about 40% of the population, less than half, that knows where the water supply wells are. Maybe that's, you may not want to advertise the location of water supply wells, but you may also want people to be aware so that they can actually pay attention to protecting land in certain areas, and especially around water supply wells. So that was interesting. And then the final question, do you know where the aquifers are? So regardless of where the well is, that well is drawing water from an aquifer underground that covers a much larger area, and protecting the area around that aquifer is really important. And really only about 25% of respondents agreed that they knew where the aquifers were. So a large, 75% or so of the population, or of the respondents anyways, were not aware of where the water supply aquifers were. Okay, again, the same thing there, the data below, and about 8 comments that are worth looking through. Question number 10 dealt with providing the level of agreement with the following statements related to Townsend's historical assets. I won't jump too deep into this one, except to say that greater than 70% in all cases at least agreed, and there were very few that disagreed. In general, it seems like Townsend's respondents to this survey really value the historic assets of the town, and knowing that the town has the 3 different historic districts and the several buildings and all of the important things, it makes sense that people in Townsend would value that. You guys really do have a unique historical culture and heritage there in town, and it was good to see that the people thought that Townsend's historical assets were indeed important. The next question dealt with providing your level of agreement with the following statements related to the acquisition and protection of open space lands for conservation purposes. So with regard to the acquisition and protection of open space lands for conservation purposes, a majority of the respondents, 81% or more, at least somewhat agreed with each of the statements. Of those, greater than 50% either agreed or strongly agreed that the town should encourage the state to acquire open space conservation lands. That was 63%. Encourage local land trusts to acquire open space conservation lands, 61%. And acquire additional open space lands for water supply protection purposes at 56%. And finally, utilize existing bylaws and regulations to protect open space lands, 54%. And finally, acquire more open space conservation lands, 51% were at least somewhat in agreement with that statement. And with regard to the town adopting new regulations and bylaws or expanding existing ones to protect open space, or using conservation restrictions, not acquisitions, to protect land, those who were either agreed or strongly agreed were closer to 40%. So a little bit less than half in those cases. Less than 19% of the respondents disagreed with any of the statements. Several additional comments, again, were also provided below, data and comments, about 8 comments here. So it was really interesting to see that such a high proportion of the respondents really thought that the town should work towards protecting additional lands where it made sense or when it made sense for certain purposes. Question 12 dealt with the town's open space goals and asked, a town's open space goals can be achieved in many different ways using a variety of funding sources. Please give your opinion on how you think open space should be funded in Townsend. So this question gave several different categories or examples of how open space should be funded. By far, respondents agreed or strongly agreed by 85 or 80, I would say 90% actually, 91% of respondents either agreed or strongly agreed that the town should use state and federal grants to fund open space. That makes sense. And it's very much worth going for these grants, and that's the purpose of this plan, to make you eligible for them. So it's good to see that people are in agreement that grants are important and think that that's the main way or most important way the town should be funding open space. The conservation fund should be used to manage and maintain existing open space lands. That one was just above 70%. So 70% of the respondents felt that the town should use the conservation fund, which is a fund account set up through conservation commissions for that purpose of acquiring or protecting open space lands and resources. The conservation fund should be used so the first one was to manage and maintain existing open space lands. The next one was the conservation fund should be used to acquire open space land. And that one was at just above 50%, with a larger proportion of people, approximately 40%, 35%, not really sure or neutral. And then about 10% made up the disagree or strongly disagree category there. So again, using the conservation fund to acquire open space land was just over 50%. And then the question should the town contribute to the conservation fund annually at town meeting? And that one came in just below 50%, probably around 46% or thereabouts, or 47.5% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the town should contribute to the conservation fund annually at town meeting, with 36% being neutral or having no opinion of that one. So a high number, and 15% disagreeing or strongly disagreeing with the town contributing to the annual fund. So the majority of the answer was in agreement with the town contributing to the conservation fund. The next one asked, should the town finance open space by adopting the Community Preservation Act, which is a tax surcharge with state matching funds? It's a program through the state and through the Community Preservation Act that was enacted. And surprisingly, a good number of respondents, I would say at the 49.7% of respondents felt that the town should adopt the CPA to help fund open space, and only 19% disagreeing or strongly disagreeing. The remaining 30% fell in that neutral or no opinion category. Here we go. We see a real shift here when we move down to the second to last category and the last category. You see that things shift from being in agreement, supportive, to in disagreement. And in this particular case, the turquoise and the orange really show up strongly. So loud and clear, the respondents to the survey felt that the disagreed when asked if the town should finance open space through a one-time conservation surtax on all taxpayers. So the answer is clear. The town's not interested, or at least through the respondents of the survey, is not interested in a one-time surtax to fund open space. And that doesn't surprise me. The final one asked if the town should finance open space through raising the general tax rate across the board. And the answer to that was overwhelmingly in disagreement as well, even more so than the previous category. So general, looking for grants to fund open space, the town contributing annually through the town budget to the conservation fund, and the potential, right around 50%, the potential of adopting the Community Preservation Act as a way to fund open space. But general tax increases, no. Okay. So again, the data here and several comments. The next question referenced that particular category of the Community Preservation Act, and it asked respondents to give a number that they would be comfortable paying annually to the Community Preservation Act if it were adopted what number would they be comfortable paying annually as their surtax towards the CPA. And the numbers ranged, and several people said none, but a considerable amount of people ranged in their answer. We had a lot of 50s, a lot of hundreds, and a lot in the 30, 35 range. So several of the respondents, if you look through the data, again, we didn't calculate the numbers here because they don't automatically generate, because it was an open-ended question. You could choose any number you wanted. We really wanted to get an idea of what people were comfortable with here, because that data can be looked at to say, okay, is that in line with what the CPA actually would be? So if about 50% of the people would be supportive of CPA, and a large number of people or respondents are comfortable paying at an amount that would be similar to what the surtax would be if it were adopted either at a 1%, 2%, or 3% rate, which is 3% is the highest rate it could be. This gives you some good information to get an idea. Is this something the town really wants and would be willing to do? Because if they are willing to pay and they are willing to adopt it, it really is a great way to fund open space and historical cultural resources and even some housing programs. So it was interesting to see that a good majority of people were within a range that if you calculated it out at a 1 or a 2% rate for Townsend, at Townsend's tax rate, it would fall within a rate that would be within that $30 to $100 range. So it might be something for the Open Space Committee to put forward as a recommended goal, and something for the town more as a whole and other bodies to consider if this really is something Townsend might want to do to help protect their open space, recreation, and improve their open space and recreation, and just as importantly, their historic and cultural resources that they value so highly. Okay, so the next question dealt with, we asked respondents to rate their level of agreement with the following statements related to bicycling and walking in Townsend. The purpose for this question was because of a few recent grants. For one, the Squannacook River Rail Trail; for two, shared streets and spaces, and improving connections for pedestrians and bicycling throughout town. And with the new high school and the rail trail quickly approaching that direction, and the potential for connections to other areas and commercial areas off of the rail trail and things like that. Biking and walking, pedestrian and bicycling has really seemed to be important over the last 5 years in Townsend, and probably even more important over the next 5 years through the life of this plan that we're writing now. So we wanted to get a good idea of how respondents felt. And as you can see, the first category, supporting the Squannacook River Rail Trail, for over 40% very strong or strongly agreed, and as many as 80% agreed or strongly agreed that it was important. Improving sidewalks, very similarly, 70% either agreed or strongly agreed that it was an important thing in Townsend. Adding connections between the bike trail and commercial and recreational facilities, again, right at 70% agreed or strongly agreed. So the large percentage of respondents and the reflection of the community seems to indicate that these are very important things. People value them, and it's a good sign for things to come, and it's makes me understand why so much good progress has been made over the last several years with these types of things. Making it easier for children to walk or bike to school. Again, over 70% in agreement. Everything from here up is 70 to 90% agreement. So even a little bit higher than I had initially thought just now looking at it. And then adding pedestrian-friendly amenities such as bike racks, bike repair stations, water fountains. It starts to go down a little bit here, but still 60% in agreement. And more importantly, not an extraordinarily high percent in disagreement, A few people in the middle with a, neutral or no opinion, but much more in agreement with the importance of it than in disagreement with it, all the way down throughout. And the only places where it really gets kind of close are, here improving signage, improving bike lanes, signs, pavement markings, stricter enforcement of speed limits. You've got a large proportion that are just neutral here and have no opinion, a little bit less in agreement with that statement. And then below that, improving bikeability, outreach, meaning outreach and education kind of to the community. It's now at 45% in agreement, a larger proportion here in the middle that are neutral, and then maybe 15% that are in disagreement with that one. So overall, it seems as though the residents of Townsend and the respondents to the survey really value bicycling and walking and consider it to be very important. Data, some comments. Again, I encourage you to read through the comments. And here we go. Question 15. Please help us to identify public outreach and education needs by rating the following statements. So this question was getting at trying to get an understanding of, what does the town need to do better or differently to try to help promote open space, recreation, conservation lands, try to get an idea of what the town is doing well and what they could do better. For the first one, people, when asked if the town should have downloadable trail maps of recreation areas available, yes, 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 yes. Overwhelmingly, 90% in agreement, and in pushing 50% strongly agree in the need for maps. People want maps, and they want downloadable maps for these areas. Should the town seek grant funding to create these maps, signs, brochures, and other outreach materials? This question was just how important is this? Is this worth pursuing a grant and someone from the town spending time and resources on a project like this? And again, overwhelmingly in agreement that yes, that is something that would be worthwhile. And in this particular case, over 80% agreed or strongly agreed in the need for that. The next statement, the town should have more web-based information available. Yes, yes, yes. People want their information and they would like to get it on the web. They want it accessible and easy to get to. And in most cases, they don't need or want printed materials. They'd rather just get it themselves when they need it, which is good because that saves paper, which saves money. The next one, open space and recreation areas need trails need signs and trail markers. Yes, this one here, set close to 70% were agreed or strongly agreed, and less than 10% disagreed or strongly disagreed. The next one asked people's awareness of state-owned conservation and recreation areas, and about 58% of people said that they were aware of these areas. But you can see here the people disagreeing or those that were unaware is sort of going up now. It's closer to the, closer to that 20% mark of the population is just unaware of these areas. So that would indicate that, yeah, we could be doing a better job of educating and promoting these areas. And the next one asked if people were aware of town-owned conservation and recreation areas. And similar to the state-owned conservation and recreation areas, the numbers were almost identical between the two. Just below 60% were aware, and close to 20% were not aware. And the next one, should the town have more brochures available? This one was people were in agreement, but a lot of neutral and even a little bit more in disagreement. Only 43% in agreement. So this tells you that printed brochures aren't what they used to be. in the days of the, roadside, huge racks with all your brochures and getting information from guides and things of that nature, that you'd pull it out and plan your vacation through all these guidebooks and things like that. I mean, now really people want to look on the internet and get their information in a downloadable digital format. But you can see that there still are some people that do want or need the brochures. Again, that's good for the town because it means that outreach can be done in different ways and sometimes in ways that reach more people for less money. So that's a great thing. The last one here dealt with asking, how good of a job does Townsend do in communicating? Does Townsend do a good job communicating about open space and recreation areas? And in this particular case, not to say anything bad about Townsend as a town, because a lot of towns are lacking here. And this is the reason for asking these questions, is so we can get things into an open space and recreation plan and do a better job of it. But really, a large number of people were in disagreement here, and a considerable amount were kind of neutral, and really only 12% or so were in agreement that Townsend does a good job of this now. So I think that there's plenty of opportunity. So don't look at that as a negative thing. Look at it as an opportunity to do more and to do it better. And also take from this data that people really are interested in this stuff and want more information related to it. And they're, you don't need to create anything fancy and print out all this stuff to get it to them. They're saying, hey, look, can you put some stuff on the web for us and have information on the web page? So I think that's a good thing. And there's some, it really tells us a lot. And I think as you guys set your goals for the next 5 years, updates to the website and outreach and digital information in this day and age is increasingly important. And the results here show that there's a need and a desire for it. So I think it's something exciting of an opportunity. Okay, again, the data and a few comments. We're almost done here, I promise. There's, I think, 3 more questions to work through. Maintenance of existing town open space and recreation areas should be accomplished through, how should maintenance be accomplished? Again, similar to acquisition of lands, the question here says maintenance should be done through grants. Overwhelmingly, over 90% of people agreed or strongly agreed that it should be done through grants. The next highest one at about 90% on the button was donated funds, and then through school, youth groups, or scout projects came in above 80%. Doesn't surprise me. Volunteers came in just above 70%. Town hired seasonal land stewardship workers, surprisingly, really, I think, came in at above 60%, just above 60%, in agreement or strongly agreeing, about the 30 to 28% neutral or no opinion, but really only 10% between the disagree or strongly disagree. So this indicates that there's some interest and need for seasonal town land stewardship workers, and a lot of small towns do it, and it's not always impossible. Creating new positions is sometimes challenging with budgets and everything, but it's not always impossible, and it's in some ways a good way to spend money. And it looks like there's some interest in that here, to make those areas better, safer, and more accessible, get a lot of the work done that volunteers or youth groups can't get done. And it goes back to the top one with grants. Sometimes there are and maybe grant programs available to hire seasonal stewardship workers for open space. So that's something worth looking into. And I thought it was interesting and neat to see that people were thinking that way. The next one has to do with the annual contribution to the conservation fund. Greater than 54%, about 53% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the town should contribute annually to the conservation fund. And it's good that a majority of respondents said that, because if you remember a few questions back, that was one of the top ways that they thought conservation lands and open space lands should be maintained, as well as acquired. So without the town contributing to that in their annual budget, you wouldn't have very many funds to go very far for that. So it's good to see that the town recognizes that the contribution to the conservation fund annually at town meeting is important. A majority of the respondents, and again, around 15% that disagreed with that. The last one is taxes, and not surprisingly, again, none of us want to pay any more taxes than we already do, especially in some of our communities where our tax rates are already higher than we think they should be. So this isn't too surprising that only 20% were in agreement that taxes should be used for maintaining open space and recreation lands, and much, much more than any other category or answer throughout this survey. The disagreement is approaching 50% here, probably at about 48%. So that's even less an agreement than when it came to the taxes in the earlier question, I think, about acquiring land. So maintaining land, taxes, no. The message is clear. Again, data and a few comments. And now we get into the demographics question. I don't need to go into much detail with these. I'll kind of skip through them here just to wrap it up. I've already talked too long, but we had a question in here getting at how long people have been a resident in Townsend. And you can see by the graphs that, the very few were not a resident of Townsend, but it seems like some people that either work in Townsend or had family in Townsend or spend a lot of time here took the survey. A few people, but less than 5 years accounted for around 15%, 5 to 10 years was around 12%, 10 to 20 years around 15%, 20 to 30 years around 12% of the respondents, and greater than 30 years had the largest number of respondents, but it's also the largest potential window or time frame that we gave. But it's really good to see that you really did get a good spread of people of how long they've lived within Townsend. So you have some people that were in Townsend for just a short amount of time, others that were there for greater than 30 years, but you have everything in the middle being pretty well represented too. So that's what you want to see in a survey, a good representation of all the different bins of time available. And this just gets at the types of property that most people own. The great majority are a house with two or more acres, followed by a house with less than 2 acres. And then some of the other categories were a lot smaller. But this just goes to show that the majority of respondents were homeowners. And the average, home lot in Townsend is covered by those first two. And the next question for demographics got at current living situation. A household that is of just a couple. Household with family of children 0 to 11 years. Those were about pretty similar, hovering just over 30%. Single household, just under 30%. That's a single occupier household, single person. Family with children 12 to 18, hovering right at the 20%. Family with children 19 plus, at about the 12 to 15%. And then other specified in the comments, but a small proportion, and households with roommates, non-family households, very small as well. So again, you got a broad variety of the different types of categories available, which means you got a good representation of the community. And finally, how old are you? Again, you had some who were on the young category, not under 18, which doesn't surprise me. But as far as voting adults, you got a decent representation of 18 to 30-year-olds, and getting that young demographic isn't always easy in surveys. So it's good to see that they made up almost 10% of the respondents. That's great. 31 to 45 was the largest, I believe, at just over 30%, 33%, and then 46 to 60, 22%, 61 to 75, right there, just under the 31 to 45, but again at 33%. And then over 75 was about 2% of the respondents. This one here just asks if people's willingness to participate in maintenance and development, basically volunteering. To what level would you want to volunteer? And I won't get into it on this question. It's more just to give you guys an idea and to see what people's level of interest is in participating in that way. But it kind of funny that we're here for an open space committee meeting, and you guys can pat yourselves on the back for dedicating your time, to being a committee member, because the lowest number here had to do with if people would be willing to participate on a committee to manage open space. And that one was lower than all of the others, with more people disagreeing with that, saying that they would never, or they don't know if they would do it, in a smaller number occasionally or often wanting to participate. So thank you guys for doing what you do and being on the open space committee and dedicating your time, because this shows that not everybody's willing to make that commitment. But a lot of people are willing to kick in and volunteer, which was good to see. So it looks like Townsend has a very good group of residents who not only took the time to take the survey, but are at least occasionally and sometimes often willing to volunteer in some open space and recreation programs or maintenance in some way or another. So I thought that was good to see. And that's all. I apologize. It was a long survey. It had 20 questions, and each question had a lot of different responses. And there was so much good data and good responses that it was worth going through them one by one. So I thank you guys for your patience and allowing me to do that. With that, I can stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you. Just one thing, Jeff, on the very, very first page where you put the dates of the survey, it's June 30th, not June 31st.
Well, I'm glad you caught that. Thank you. Yes, I will correct that. I knew that.
Sure you did.
But I've made that same mistake in about 3 different places then, because I guess I should say I should have known that. Yep, I'll fix that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So the next item is review of submitted revisions. Does anybody really know what that means? Does that mean the revision we sent to you?
Yeah, I can comment on that briefly, and I promise this one we will keep short. I just want to say that I've received comments back from 3 different people, and I'll mention who I've received them from, just so that everybody can understand sort of the type of information I've gotten. And that's not to give anybody a gold star and to call anybody else out for not getting information, but it just so that if you haven't given information and you think you might have some good, useful information that these 3 people haven't gotten to me, definitely still open to taking more information as I continue to write the draft. And even though this is sort of a little bit of homework, I'm not the strictest teacher in the classroom when it comes to deadlines. And this is a working plan, and it's an open period. So don't feel like you missed a deadline and now it's too late. You can get me information, whether it's a lot or a little, at any time. You can send me a quick email tomorrow, like, hey, I was reading through and I saw this and I thought of this, or whatever it might be. Don't hesitate to send me any information. And I'm working on this first draft now as I speak. I've already put some updates in, but really over the next week to 2-3 weeks tops, I plan on completing a first draft so that by the end of August, I have a first draft. And that way there, in September, myself and the committee can be doing two things. We can be looking at this rough draft and we can start to fashion those goals and visions. That's sort of the between now and then, between now and the September meeting, whenever it might be, looking over those survey results and getting an idea of how you think what information it gives you and how you think the public is to identify what those needs might be. And from the needs of the public, start thinking about the goals that should go into the plan for the next 5 years. So real quick, thank you, Carol. I got some information from Carol, a few minor comments. I went in and updated them, mostly related to her background and experience with the cultural and historic resources, but a few other general comments throughout the whole plan. I got comments from George Sullivan, mostly related to Board of Health stuff, who he's sitting in and representing, but also he went through the whole plan, gave me some general comments. He had some on the historical stuff too, based on some, interest and knowledge he has in that regard. He answered some of the questions about the buildings that were no longer there. And, himself and one other told me that the new fire station has been built and that one building was demolished that was on the historic list of properties. So it's good to be able to update those things in the plan. And then finally, Mary Jane specifically went through on the historic areas and reviewed that section closely and made some comments and echoed the comments that George had sent me, as well as some others. So I got some good answers to that being section 4 in the plan. But I ask that I'm working right now on the section 3 mostly. But anybody on any of the sections from 1 to 4, if you have any comments, please let me know, because I'd like to be finished with the first draft of sections 1 through 4 by the end of August, so that we can start thinking about the next sections 5, 6, 7, and 8, where we're going to be dealing more with vision, goals, needs, and those types of things, right? So you still have some time. If you have a chance to read through the report, if you've already made some notes, feel free to send things along. If you even just want to call and say hello, some people don't want to put things down and make all these notes. Also, some people might have a few questions before they can make comments. If that's the case, feel free to call me anytime. My phone line is open. I'm available. If I was down the hall, I'd say pop in, knock on my door, and stop in the office. But I really do like talking to people and working through things. So if you have any comments or questions, even, just feel free to reach out to me. Sometimes a 5-minute conversation, I'll learn more about Townsend than I will from your 2 pages of notes and from pouring through this report, even just from talking with you guys and you guys telling me things that you know about the town. Again, a town that I'm familiar with, but I'm not local to. So you guys know much, much more than I ever will, even at the end of this plan. But I hope to learn as much as I can from you guys so that we can get it all into the plan. And anytime you want, feel free to reach out. That's all I have there.
Thank you. I think that brings us to, do we have anything for the work session? Do we want to discuss anything?
No, I think
I
Jeff
think,
gave us the homework, right?
yeah, I think we have our homework,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, with those
So-
new survey results and with the comments to summarize all the data, I think it will, rather than just looking at the tables and the graphs, I think those summary paragraphs that I provided in there should really help with kind of understanding and interpreting the data. If there's anything that you think that I missed or that you disagree with, again, same thing goes there. Let me know. And if I interpreted some of the percentages wrong or interpreted the meaning of the percentages wrong, or if I missed something that you'd like me to add into that narrative, let me know. That narrative as you see it with some additions. The last three questions I had to put in notes because I couldn't get them to update into the PDF today. But I'll add those in, and that will basically be one of the appendices. It will be appended to the open space and recreation plan. So people's comments will be seen there, and as part of a transparent process. And again, it's one of the required things that we include in the plan is the public input. So we got a lot of good feedback. Read through my notes and read through the comments provided by the public, because sometimes that tells you even more than the percentages alone will.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, guys.
have a good night.
Okay, I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
So would somebody like to make a motion to close the meeting? Or during the
We
meeting?
have to make the motion
To what?
to plan the next meeting.
Oh, to plan the next meeting. When would we like to plan the next meeting?
Are we doing another one in August or are we doing in September?
No, it sounded like he wanted us to have by the end of August something.
Yeah.
Right before.
And this is, you
Hello?
said it in September.
September? Okay, that's what I thought I heard. But then I thought, well, we didn't have August, but today's all.
Yeah, it's September.
September.
Okay. Well, the 5th is Labor Day, so I don't know.
That's out.
The
When does the
12th,
planning board meet?
oh, yeah. Mike's not here because he has a calendar with the planning board.
Okay, second. and third?
I think why don't we
Planning
pick a
board.
date and then give it to Mike, and then Mike sort of changes it.
Because I know the
That's a good
planning,
idea.
Oh, yeah, that's what he did.
Yeah.
last time.
You changed it last time.
yeah, okay.
Pick a date,
Pick a
Okay.
date.
and then he'll,
The 12th,
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay. September
the
12th.
12th,
sure.
What day is it?
Yeah, what day is
it's
it?
Monday.
Monday? And what time?
Do the same time, 7
Okay.
PM. I guess that works for
It'll be
everybody.
dark, yeah.
It'll be darker, dark.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to schedule the next meeting for September 12th at 7 o'clock.
Second.
Okay, well, Mary Jane, how do you vote?
Agree, approve, yes.
Stuart,
I agree.
James,
Yes.
Carol Hofstas, yes.
Veronica, yeah. Okay.
And Dave, how do you
That's
vote?
Colby, and
And
Colby
And
too.
Colby?
Yeah, Colby.
Yes.
Thank you.
Colby is me. Who did you talk? Oh.
All right, now, well, can we take a motion to adjourn?
You wouldn't have to do that.
You make a motion to adjourn.
I need to vote, sure.
Okay, go for it.
We'll make the motion to close the hearing, that meeting.
Meeting, I guess it is. Got a hearing. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And James, how do you vote?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Colby?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yeah.
And Carol?
Yes.
Also says yes.